Hello, dear listener. Welcome back to Whispers in the Dark, the place where shadows speak and forgotten souls find their voice. We're journeying deep into the heart of the South, into the whispering pines, crumbling antebellum mansions, and fog-laced cemeteries of Georgia. This is a land of contradictions, of sweet tea and southern charm, yes, but also of blood-soaked soil, Civil War ghosts, and secrets buried beneath centuries of silence. Georgia isn't just a peach state. It's a graveyard of stories, some told, most not. And tonight, we're uncovering the truth behind the 20 most haunted places in Georgia. From haunted hotels where guests vanish in the night, to asylums where the screams never stopped, to plantations where the chains still rattle in the dark. We'll walk through each location, guided only by eyewitness accounts, historical records, and the chilling echoes of the dead. So pull the blankets a little tighter, turn off the lights, let the shadows grow long, because what you're about to hear may not let you sleep tonight. This is not fiction. This is real. And if you listen closely, you might just hear them too. The Sorrel-Weed House, in the heart of Savannah's historic district, is one of those places where the past refuses to stay buried. Strolling down the cobblestone streets, you'll find the grand structure standing with an almost defiant beauty. Its Greek Revival columns and ornate ironwork speak of wealth and prestige, but the air surrounding it feels heavy, as though the walls themselves remember every whispered secret and every scream that once echoed inside. The house was built in 1840 by Francis Sorrel, a prosperous shipping merchant who sought to display his success in the thriving port city. From the outside, it was everything a wealthy man of his time could desire. Tall ceilings, spacious rooms, and decorative touches imported from Europe. Visitors admired its refinement, and it quickly became a symbol of status. But beneath its polished facade, the Sorrel-Weed House harbored a story of passion, betrayal, and despair that would stain its legacy forever. One of the earliest and most enduring tales revolves around a young woman named Molly. Accounts differ as to who she truly was. Some say she was an enslaved servant. Others claim she was Francis Sorrel's mistress. What most versions agree upon is that Molly developed a forbidden relationship with one of Francis's sons. When she discovered she was pregnant, the truth could no longer be hidden. In the rigid society of the 1800s, such a scandal was intolerable. She was cast out of the household, her reputation shattered, her future stripped away. But Molly did not vanish quietly. On a stormy night, she is said to have returned to the Sorrel home, her heart heavy with grief and betrayal. Climbing to the rooftop balcony, she threw herself from the edge, her body landing lifeless below. The tragedy sent ripples of shame and gossip through Savannah, but the story did not end with Molly's death. Soon after, strange occurrences began to plague the Sorrel family. Servants whispered of footsteps pacing the upper floors when no one was there. Doors opened and slammed without cause. Guests reported seeing a shadowy figure drifting along the balcony where Molly had taken her final leap. Some even claimed to hear a woman weeping in the dead of night, her sobs echoing through the halls as though she still mourned the life denied to her. Francis Sorrel himself was not immune to tragedy. His wife Matilda is said to have discovered his affair with Molly. The betrayal consumed her, and legend has it that she too met a violent end within the house, possibly by her own hand. The details vary. Some say she leaped from a second-story window. Others insist she hanged herself in despair. But all agree her restless spirit lingers. Many visitors claim to feel her sorrow in the rooms she once inhabited. A suffocating sadness that presses against the chest and steals the breath away. The combination of Molly's death and Matilda's anguish created a vortex of energy that, according to paranormal investigators, has never lifted. Today, the Sorrel-Weed House is regarded as one of the most haunted places in the United States, drawing curious travelers, ghost hunters, and skeptics alike. Those who step inside often describe a chilling heaviness. In the parlor, where the Sorrel family once entertained Savannah's elite, visitors report sudden drops in temperature and the overwhelming sensation of being watched. Some have seen flickers of movement in the mirrors, as though another face is peering back from beyond. Upstairs, in In the rooms connected to Molly's story, cameras malfunction, batteries drain without explanation, and strange orbs appear in photographs. The basement may be the most unnerving space of all. Once used as slave quarters, it carries the weight of unimaginable suffering. Paranormal teams have recorded disembodied voices, whispers that rise and fall like distant conversations. Others have reported being touched, grabbed, or even shoved when no one else was near. Candles refuse to stay lit, and shadows move against the walls, independent of any light source. For some, the atmosphere is so oppressive that they cannot stay in the basement for more than a few minutes. But the Sorrel-Weed House does not simply trade on folklore and superstition. Over the years, countless visitors, tour guides, and investigators have collected evidence. Unexplained photographs showing faces in the windows, recordings of chilling voices, and first-hand accounts of apparitions dressed in period clothing wandering the halls. Skeptics may dismiss the stories as tricks of the imagination, yet the sheer number of consistent experiences is difficult to ignore. Perhaps the most unnerving aspect of the house is its ability to make the living feel what the dead once endured. Guests frequently describe waves of sorrow, anger, or panic that crash over them without warning. Others recount vivid dreams or nightmares after visiting, as though the house follows them home. Even in daylight, when the sun illuminates its stately columns, the Sorrel-Weed House exudes an aura of unease. What makes the Sorrel-Weed House unique is the blend of its tragic history and its persistent hauntings. It is not simply a place where something terrible happened. It is a place where that pain seems to replay endlessly, looping through time. Molly's desperate leap, Matilda's despair, the cries from the basement, they remain stitched into the very fabric of the home. For Savannah, a city draped in Spanish moss and steeped in ghostly lore, the Sorrel-Weed House stands apart as one of its darkest legends. Visitors come seeking chills, and more often than not, they leave with stories of their own, stories of cold hands brushing their skin, of shadows darting across the staircase, of whispers that sound far too close. The house has become a monument, not only to wealth and architecture, but also to the human emotions that transcend death, love, betrayal, grief, and longing. Even now, nearly 2 centuries after its construction, the Sorrel-Weed House holds fast to its secrets. It is a place where history is alive, where tragedy is eternal, and where the boundary between the living and the dead grows thin. Anyone who dares to walk its halls joins the long line of witnesses who have felt its lingering presence. And though they may leave, the Sorrel-Weed House never truly lets them go. The Mercer House, now more commonly known as the Mercer Williams House Museum, stands in Savannah with a grace that hides the shadows within. Its Gothic Revival architecture, its arched windows, and its stately brick exterior seem to promise elegance and refinement. From the outside, it is a Southern masterpiece, a proud emblem of Savannah's history. But step inside, or even stand too long at its gates and you may begin to feel it, the quiet weight of sorrow, violence, and mystery that has seeped into its walls. The house began its story in the 1860s, designed for General Hugh W. Mercer, the great-grandfather of famed songwriter Johnny Mercer. Yet the Mercer family never lived there. Through decades of shifting ownership, the mansion stood as a striking but incomplete dream, its grandeur matched only by the whispers of misfortune surrounding it. But it was not until the 20th century that the Mercer House would etch itself into Savannah's darkest legends. In the mid-1900s, Jim Williams, a charismatic and wealthy antiques dealer, purchased the home. Williams was a man of refinement, with a sharp eye for beauty and an ambition that helped restore much of Savannah's historic charm. Under his care, the Mercer House bloomed into a dazzling residence filled with art, antiques, and the sparkle of high society gatherings. Yet behind its polished veneer, darker currents stirred. On a May night in 1981. Violence shattered the elegance of the Mercer House forever. In the study of the mansion, Jim Williams shot and killed Danny Hansford, a young man with whom he had a complicated and volatile relationship. Williams insisted it was self-defense, that Hansford had turned violent and forced his hand, but Savannah was divided. The scandal grew, feeding newspapers and gossip for years. Williams stood trial not once, but 4 separate times, making his case the longest running in Georgia history. Finally, after years of courtroom battles, he was acquitted. But acquittal did not erase the stain. The Mercer House became a place where people could not help but wonder, was justice truly served, or did the walls of that mansion hide secrets no verdict could uncover? Today, many say the house still remembers that night in 1981. Guests and staff have spoken of hearing the sound of gunshots echoing through the halls. Sharp cracks that vanish into silence when investigated. Footsteps often pace across the upstairs gallery at night, long after the museum has closed. Guides describe feeling as though they are being watched in the study, where Williams once stood over Hansford's body. The most chilling tales involve Danny himself. Some believe his spirit never left, bound to the Mercer House in an endless cycle of fear and rage. A well-known psychic who visited the mansion once claimed Hansford's soul was trapped there, forced to relive his final, desperate moments again and again. Visitors to the study often report an icy chill that clings to their skin, a sudden drop in temperature that defies explanation. Many say they feel a suffocating presence, though someone is standing just behind them. One woman fainted after feeling a cold, invisible hand seize her wrist, gripping tightly before letting go. Others describe an overwhelming sense of dread in the exact spot where Hansford fell. The air there, they say, feels different, as though it carries the memory of a violent end. But Danny is not the only spirit said to linger within the Mercer House. Some claim Jim Williams himself never left. After all, he died in the same mansion in 1990. Less than a year after his acquittal. His death came suddenly, in almost the same spot where Hansford had fallen nearly a decade earlier. The coincidence was too strange for many to ignore, fueling speculation that Williams's fate was forever tied to the house and the man he killed. Visitors sometimes report seeing a shadowy figure resembling Williams standing in the study, staring silently at his own portrait. Others claim to hear the faint sound of his footsteps echoing through the rooms, as though he still surveys the home he once loved so fiercely. For some, the Mercer House is more than a haunted mansion. It is a mirror of Savannah itself. The city is beautiful, charming, and elegant, but beneath the surface lies a history marked by violence, tragedy, and secrets. The Mercer House embodies that duality. It is both a museum of fine art and antiques, and a prison of restless spirits. Even in daylight, with tourists strolling through its halls, the atmosphere feels charged. Cameras malfunction, batteries drain in seconds, and photographs sometimes reveal streaks of light or hazy figures that were not there in person. At night, the house takes on an even more unsettling character. Locals crossing Monterey Square speak of shadows flitting across the windows when the house is locked and empty. Some have heard the echo of laughter drifting into the square, a phantom remnant of the glittering parties Williams once hosted. And then there is the silence. Guides often remark that the Mercer House is never truly quiet. There is always a faint creak, a soft thud, a sigh of air from nowhere. It is a place alive with memory, heavy with the unfinished business of the dead. The Mercer House has been immortalized in books and films, most famously in Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, which brought international attention to its dark story. But no page, no screen, no tour can fully capture the feeling of standing inside that house. It is the sensation of beauty and dread colliding, of history breathing down your neck, of tragedy whispering in your ear. For some, it is merely a museum filled with antiques and southern charm. For others, it is one of Savannah's most haunted landmarks, a place where time loops endlessly, trapping both the living and the dead in its grasp. The Mercer House remains a masterpiece of architecture, a jewel in Savannah's crown, and yet a scar that never truly heals. Its walls hold secrets, its halls echo with the footsteps of those who refuse to leave. And its story reminds us that beauty and darkness often walk hand in hand. The Kehoe House rises on Columbia Square, its grand red brick facade, framed with intricate ironwork that gleams in the Savannah sunlight. Built in 1892, this stately mansion was the pride of William Kehoe, a wealthy iron foundry owner who wanted a home that reflected his success. With tall windows, elaborate staircases, and fine details crafted by his own foundry. The house was a testament to both prosperity and artistry. But behind the elegance, sorrow left its imprint on the family, and the echoes of that sorrow still seem to linger within the walls. William Kehoe and his wife Mary raised 10 children in the mansion. By all appearances, theirs was a life of abundance and joy. The house was filled with laughter, family gatherings, and the bustle of children running up and down the stairs. Yet tragedy has a way of slipping into even the happiest of homes. Their young daughter, Lily, fell gravely ill, and despite the best efforts of doctors and family, she passed away. Her death devastated Mary. Mary Kehoe's grief ran deep. She adored her children, and losing Lily shattered her spirit. Friends and relatives spoke of her depression, a heaviness that never seemed to lift. Though she tried to maintain appearances for her family, the loss left a hollow sadness in her eyes. In 1908, Mary herself died inside the home. The official cause remains uncertain. Say it was illness. Others whisper it was suicide brought on by unbearable grief. Whatever the truth, the family never fully recovered. The years passed, and the Kehoe house eventually changed hands. It was a funeral home for a time, a private residence again, and finally restored into the luxury bed and breakfast it is today. Guests come for the romance of Savannah, the promise of Southern hospitality, and the charm of staying in a historic mansion. But many leave with stories of encounters they cannot explain. The most common phenomenon reported is the scent of roses drifting through the halls. Sweet and sudden, the fragrance often appears without warning, even when no flowers are present. Those familiar with the history of the house know the connection roses were Mary Kehoe's favorite. It is said she surrounded herself with them during her lifetime, and perhaps in death, she still does. For some, the floral scent feels like a gentle caress, a reminder of love that endures beyond the grave. For others, it is an unsettling signal that the house remains inhabited by spirits. Guests have also spoken of the sound of children's laughter echoing through the corridors at night. Light, playful giggles float down the stairs or drift through closed doors, even when no children are staying at the inn. Some believe it is the lingering presence of young Lily, forever playing in the home she once knew. Others think the spirits of all the Kehoe children remain bound to the house that held their happiest memories. Among all the rooms in the Kehoe house, Room 203 is the one most often mentioned in ghost stories. This is the room where Mary Kehoe is said to have died, and visitors report strange, chilling experiences there. One guest described waking in the middle of the night to find a woman dressed in Victorian clothing sitting silently at the foot of the bed. Her face was obscured by shadows, but her posture was unmistakably sorrowful. The guest swore the figure was weeping softly, and when the light was turned on, she vanished. Another visitor claimed to have felt the weight of someone sitting on the mattress beside them, though no one was there. Some guests have even left abruptly, unable to spend another night in the room after feeling watched or hearing whispers in the dark. The staff, while discreet, acknowledge the history and do not dismiss the possibility of ghostly presences. After all, the Kehoe house has stood for over a century, and in Savannah City, steeped in restless history, such hauntings are almost expected. Paranormal investigators who have visited the property report unusual activity, sudden temperature drops, unexplained orbs of light caught on camera, and electronic voice recordings capturing faint words. One recording seemed to contain a child's voice saying, "Mama." Others have captured what sounds like crying, as though someone is mourning in an empty room. Yet the Kehoe house is not considered a place of terror, so much as one of lingering sadness and love. Unlike darker hauntings, marked by violence or rage, the spirits here seem tethered by grief, longing, and devotion. Mary's sorrow for her daughter, and perhaps her own untimely end, seems etched into the house's very foundation. And the laughter of children, though eerie in the silence of night, carries a sweetness to an echo of innocence preserved against the passage of time. For visitors, the Kehoe house offers an unusual blend of romance and ghostly mystery. Many couples come to celebrate anniversaries or honeymoons, staying in candlelit rooms with antique furnishings. Some leave with nothing more than cherished memories of hospitality and southern charm. Others depart with stories of roses blooming in the air, unseen children racing through the hallways, or a Victorian woman sitting silently at their bedside. The mansion endures as both a monument to prosperity and a vessel of memory. Its iron railings and brick walls have withstood more than a century, but they have also absorbed the emotions of those who lived and died within. In Savannah, a city where history and hauntings walk hand in hand, the Kehoe House is a perfect example of how beauty and sorrow intertwine. Today, as guests lay their heads to rest in its rooms, perhaps Mary Kehoe still lingers, tending to her children, keeping watch over the home she loved, or quietly mourning what she lost. The roses bloom in the air, though no petals remain. The laughter of children rings out, though the halls are empty. And in room 203, tears may still fall in the quiet hours of night. The Kehoe House remains a place where the veil between past and present grows thin. It is at once a luxurious inn and a haunting reminder that love and loss leave traces time cannot erase. For those who stay within its walls, the experience is unforgettable, not only for its beauty, but for the spirits who may still call it home. The Old Pink House is one of Savannah's most beloved landmarks. Its pale, rose-colored walls glow warmly under the Georgia sun, and at night its soft lights cast a romantic charm across the square. Today, it is a celebrated restaurant where visitors dine on Southern classics and toast beneath chandeliers. But behind the laughter of guests and the clinking of glasses, there lingers something much older, much darker. For the Old Pink House carries with it more than 2 centuries of shadowed history and, with it, a reputation as one of the city's most haunted locations. The story begins in 1789, when the mansion was built for James Habersham Jr., the son of a wealthy merchant and planter. It was meant to symbolize prosperity and refinement in the growing port city. The walls, though now faintly pink, were originally white stucco. Over time, moisture seeped through the bricks beneath, and the red clay bled through, giving the house its distinctive hue. Locals, charmed by the unusual color, began calling it the Pink House, a name that endures to this day. Before Habersham's home was built, however, the land had already seen years of activity. In the 18th century, it was the site of a tavern where sailors, traders, and locals mingled. But according to legend, the tavern also played host to something far darker. Secret auctions were said to have been held in the cellar, where enslaved men, women, and children were bought and sold away from the public eye. Some tales even claim that violence often followed these transactions, and that not every soul brought into those stone rooms left alive. Whether fact or folklore, the stories of those hidden auctions continue to shape the atmosphere of the Old Pink House's basement. Today, it serves as the restaurant's wine cellar and tavern bar, but many who descend into the cool, dimly lit stone chamber describe a heaviness that is difficult to explain. Staff have reported hearing the unmistakable sound of chains dragging across the floor, as though the past insists on making itself heard. Cold spots linger without reason, chilling the skin even in the heat of summer. For some, it feels as though the suffering of those who pass through still clings to the walls. The hauntings are not confined to the cellar. The house itself is said to host a variety of spectral figures. One of the most commonly reported apparitions is that of a man dressed in colonial attire, often seen descending the back staircase. Witnesses say he moves with purpose, only to vanish as he reaches the bottom step. Some believe this spirit is James Habersham Jr. himself, the home's original owner. Habersham's life ended under mysterious circumstances in 1799, though officially attributed to natural causes. Rumors swirled that he may have taken his own life, consumed by despair after the death of his wife. In the dining rooms, guests have occasionally reported catching sight of Habersham's ghost seated at a table, quietly observing the room before fading away. Servers tell of chairs shifting on their own, glasses moving without a hand near them, and lights flickering in patterns too deliberate to be dismissed as coincidence. Some believe Habersham continues to watch over the house he built, unwilling more, perhaps unable to leave. Other spirits are said to linger as well, Diners and staff alike have described the figure of a woman, dressed in 18th century clothing, gliding silently across the upstairs rooms. Sometimes she is seen gazing out a window as though waiting for someone who never arrives. At other times, her reflection has appeared in mirrors long after the room seemed empty. But perhaps the most chilling encounters occur late at night, after the last guests have gone and the restaurant is locked for the evening. Staff cleaning up have reported hearing faint laughter echoing from the upper floors, the sound of footsteps pacing overhead, and even the strains of music, though no one remains in the building. In some cases, employees have left hurriedly, unable to shake the feeling of unseen eyes following their every move. The wine cellar, however, is where the weight of the past is felt most strongly. Guests enjoying a drink have suddenly shivered at the brush of something cold against their necks. Others have sworn they heard whispering voices in the stone arches. One bartender claimed to see the shadow of a man standing near the far wall, only for it to dissolve when approached. And still, there are the chains, the dragging sound that scrapes across the floor, as though someone long ago is still bound in the darkness. What makes the old pink house so compelling is the way its beauty and horror exist side by side. To the casual visitor, it is a place of warmth, where fine meals are shared and memories are made. Yet to those who linger, who pause to listen closely, it is a reminder that history does not simply vanish with time. It lives on, etched into the bricks, whispered through the halls, carried by the spirits of those who refuse to be forgotten. Savannah itself is a city built on layers of memory, each street corner and square steeped in stories of love, loss, and tragedy. The old pink house captures that essence perfectly. It stands as both a jewel of the city's hospitality and a monument to the darker chapters of its past. Visitors who dine there may leave with nothing more than a full stomach and fond memories, but others walk away with stories of shadows, whispers, and chills that defy explanation. In the end, the old pink house is more than a restaurant, more than a historic home. It is a place where the past and present blur together, where laughter from the dining room mingles with the faint sound of chains below, and where the spirit of a man in colonial dress still lingers on the staircase. Its pink walls may glow warmly in the daylight, but when the night settles in Savannah, the house reveals its true nature, a place where beauty and tragedy are forever entwined. The Andrew Lowe House stands proudly on Lafayette Square, its stately Italianate architecture and elegant design reflecting the grandeur of 19th century Savannah. Built in 1848 for wealthy cotton merchant Andrew Lowe, the mansion quickly became a hub of social gatherings, refinement, and prestige. Its arched windows, sweeping staircase, and lavish drawing rooms embodied prosperity. But while its beauty is undeniable, the house holds a story steeped in loss, sorrow, and lingering spirits. Perhaps its most famous resident was Juliette Gordon Lowe, Andrew's daughter-in-law, and the visionary founder of the Girl Scouts of America. Juliette, affectionately called Daisy, was a woman of strength and compassion, whose dedication to empowering girls left an enduring legacy. Yet her personal life was filled with heartbreak. Her marriage was troubled, her health fragile, and in 1927, breast cancer claimed her life. She spent her final days in the drawing room of the Andrew Lowe House, surrounded by family and a place she had long called home. It is here, in that very drawing room, that many believe Juliette's spirit still lingers. Guests and caretakers alike have reported sudden whiffs of lavender filling the air. Lavender was her favorite fragrance, and the scent often appears without explanation, drifting through the halls like a delicate reminder of her presence. Some visitors have been so struck by its intensity that they've searched for candles or flowers, only to find none. For them, the perfume is not a coincidence, but Juliette herself, gently watching over the house. The mansion is also known for its mysterious music. The parlor, once filled with laughter, conversations, and melodies, often seems to awaken at night. Several caretakers have reported the sound of piano keys being struck, faint at first, then clearer, as though someone is practicing a familiar tune. When they enter the room, the piano sits silent, untouched, its lid closed. Some say the music is Juliet's way of keeping the house alive with the joy she once brought to it. Others believe it is a remnant of the many gatherings hosted in those rooms, the echoes of evenings that never truly ended. But the most unsettling experiences often happen after dark, when the house grows quiet. On more than one occasion, caretakers have reported seeing a figure at the window, a woman dressed in a long, old-fashioned gown. She stands still, gazing out into Lafayette Square, as if waiting for someone who will never arrive. When approached, the figure fades, leaving only the faintest shimmer of light against the glass. Many believe this apparition is Juliette Gordon-Low herself, watching over the world she left behind, perhaps looking for the girls who carried on her dream. One of the most peculiar tales connected to the house involves a Girl Scout troop visiting on a guided tour. The young scouts eagerly explored the rooms, listening to stories about Juliet's life and accomplishments. But as the evening wore on, something strange happened. Their badges, pinned proudly to their uniforms, mysteriously vanished. The group searched high and low, retracing every step, but the badges were nowhere to be found. The girls left disappointed, puzzled by the disappearance. The following morning, however, when staff entered the drawing room, they found the missing badges neatly arranged on the mantel. Even more chilling, they were laid out in the shape of the Girl Scout knot, the symbolic emblem of the organization Juliet founded. Whether it was a playful message from Juliet herself or an inexplicable coincidence, the event left an indelible impression on all who heard it. To this day, that story is told to scouts who visit as a reminder that Juliet may still be watching over her girls. Beyond Juliet, the Andrew Low House carries the weight of its longer history. Andrew Low, a wealthy businessman, filled the home with luxury but also endured his share of sorrow. His wife Mary Cooper Low died young, and his son, William McKay Low, became estranged from Juliet during their troubled marriage. With so many emotions, grief, love, betrayal woven into the home, it is little wonder the mansion resonates with energy that cannot be easily explained. Staff who maintain the property today often speak of subtle experiences. Doors that were locked are found ajar in the morning. Lights flicker in rooms with no electrical issues. Portraits on the wall seem to shift ever so slightly, as though the eyes are following those who pass. While some dismiss these events as tricks of the imagination, others are convinced they are the subtle signs of those who remain unseen. The house's atmosphere itself is hard to ignore. Even in the warmth of daylight, visitors describe a feeling of being watched. At night, that sensation grows stronger. Tour guides leading ghost walks often pause in front of the mansion, pointing to its grand windows as they recount the sightings of shadowy figures pacing within. Long after the house has closed, passers-by have even claimed to see candles glowing in upstairs windows, flickering in the darkness, though no one is inside. The Andrew Low House is not a place of terror, but rather one of lingering presence. Its hauntings are tied not to violence or rage, but to love, grief, and memory. Juliette Gordon-Low's life was one of service and inspiration, and it seems fitting that her spirit would remain among the walls that held her final breath. For the Girl Scouts who visit, her presence is comforting, a reminder that their founder still watches over them. For others, the house serves as a powerful example of how the past lives on, not just in history books, but in the very air we breathe. In Savannah, where nearly every square and street carries a ghostly tale, the Andrew Low House stands out for its blend of elegance and sorrow. Its beauty captures the eye, but its unseen residents capture the imagination. The scent of lavender, the music of an invisible piano, the figure at the window, these are not simply ghost stories, but fragments of a life that continues to touch generations. The Andrew Low House is more than a museum. It is a place where history lingers, where the spirit of a remarkable woman may still walk, and where the veil between past and present feels achingly thin. For those who visit, the experience is unforgettable, not just for the grandeur of its rooms, but for the sense that someone is still there, watching, waiting, and perhaps smiling at the legacy she left behind. The Marshall House is one of Savannah's most historic hotels, a grand building that has stood on Bratton Street since 1851, with its Rotteran balconies and elegant architecture. It embodies the Southern charm that draws visitors to the city. Today, guests come for comfort, hospitality, and a taste of history. But what many don't realize is that the Marshall House is also one of Savannah's most haunted place, is a place where the past still walks the halls, and where echoes of war, death, and sorrow linger long after the battles ended. When it first opened, the Marshall House was a jewel of Savannah, a luxurious hotel that welcomed travelers from across the region. But its history took a darker turn during the Civil War. From 1864 to 1865, as Union troops occupied Savannah, the hotel was converted into a hospital. Its grand rooms, once filled with laughter and conversation, became crowded with wounded soldiers. Beds lined the halls. The air was thick with the smell of blood, medicine, and death. Doctors worked tirelessly, performing amputations and tending to injuries as best they could. But medical practices of the era were crude and painful. Without modern anesthesia or antibiotics, countless men succumbed to infection, shock, or fever. It is said that hundreds died within the walls of the Marshall House during those harrowing months. The building that once symbolized luxury became instead a place of suffering, its floors echoing with groans and cries of soldiers whose lives were cut short. That legacy of pain has never truly faded. Guests who stay at the Marshall House today often report unsettling experiences. Some have heard moans and groans drifting from empty rooms in the middle of the night. Others describe footsteps pacing the hallways when no one is there, or doors opening and closing on their own. Staff members tell of beds that shake violently as guests sleep, as if invisible hands are trying to rouse them. These events happen too often to dismiss as coincidence. And they remind everyone that the building's history cannot be forgotten. The apparitions most often seen are those of nurses women dressed in Civil War-era uniforms, carrying lanterns as they move quietly through the halls. Guests have described seeing these figures glide past their doors, their expressions solemn and focused, as if still tending to the wounded. Some visitors have even felt the gentle touch of a hand on their shoulder or arm, as though a nurse was checking on them in the night. For many, these encounters feel less frightening than sorrowful, a reminder of the compassion that once balanced the horrors of war. But not all encounters are so gentle. Room 308, in particular, has earned a reputation as the most haunted spot in the hotel. Guests who stay there report strange, chilling experiences that they cannot explain. One man recounted waking in the dead of night to find someone sitting in the chair across from his bed. The figure wore a Confederate uniform, his face pale and weary, his eyes fixed directly on the guest. Frozen in shock, the man blinked, and in that instant, the soldier was gone, leaving the chair empty and the air unnervingly cold. Others who have stayed in room 308 describe shadows shifting across the walls, objects moving on their own, and the overwhelming sensation of being watched. Some have refused to spend a second night in the room, unable to shake the feeling that they are not alone. For many, the spirit of the soldier remains one of the most vivid and chilling encounters tied to the Marshall House. The basement of the hotel holds its own grim stories. During renovations in the 1990s, workers discovered human remains buried beneath the floors believed to be amputated limbs from the Civil War hospital. The discovery confirmed what many had long suspected, that the Marshall House's foundations were quite literally built upon the remnants of suffering. To this day, visitors report strange activity in the lower levels, from disembodied voices to sudden, icy drafts. Even outside of the infamous room 308 and the basement, the entire building seems alive with energy. Guests walking the halls have caught glimpses of figures in period clothing vanishing around corners. Children are sometimes heard laughing in the corridors, though no children are present. Lights flicker in empty rooms, and water faucets turn on and off by themselves. Some say the spirits are restless, unable to leave the place where their lives ended. Others believe they remain to ensure their stories are never forgotten. Despite its hauntings, the Marshall House is not a place of terror, but rather one of memory. The spirits that roam its halls seem tied less to malice and more to the echoes of their lives. The soldiers who suffered, the nurses who cared for them, and the countless guests who came and went all left their mark on the building. For modern visitors, encountering these spirits is a reminder of the human cost of history. The allure of the Marshall House lies in this duality. By day, it is a bustling hotel, its rooms filled with laughter, conversation, and the clatter of silverware from the restaurant. By night, however, the atmosphere changes. Shadows deepen, the air grows heavier, and the whispers of the past rise to the surface. For those who believe, the spirits are never far away, drifting silently through the halls, revisiting the rooms where their stories ended. In Savannah City, renowned for its ghosts, the Marshall House holds a special place. It is one of the oldest hotels in town, a landmark of both elegance and tragedy. Its history cannot be separated from the suffering that once filled its rooms, and that history continues to reveal itself in the footsteps, voices, and apparitions experienced by those who stay within its walls. For some, the Marshall House is a luxurious retreat. For others, it is a living museum, a place where the past breathes alongside the present. And for the unlucky few, it is something more, a chance to come face to face with the spirits of soldiers and nurses who never truly left. Whether you believe or not, one thing is certain, the Marshall House remembers. And if you spend a night there, you may find that it remembers you, too. Dahlonega, nestled in the rolling North Georgia mountains, is known today for its charm. The town square glitters with shops, wineries, and the warmth of small-town life. Tourists stroll the cobblestone streets, unaware that this quaint community sits on a foundation of tragedy. Long before Dahlonega became known as the Azalea City, it was the site of America's first gold rush. The discovery of gold in the 1820s transformed the quiet mountains into a frenzy of greed, labor, and untold suffering. The promise of wealth drew thousands of prospectors to the region. Some struck it rich, but most found only back-breaking work in the deep shafts and tunnels that honeycombed the earth. The Consolidated Gold Mine, one of the largest operations in the area, stands today as a tourist attraction. Visitors descend beneath the earth to see the vast chambers carved out by pickaxes and dynamite more than a century ago. But beneath the historical tours and the sparkle of gold dust lies a darker truth. These mines were death traps. Conditions in the mines were brutal. Workers toiled long hours by lamplight, their lungs filling with dust and fumes. Explosions and cave-ins were common, collapsing tunnels and burying men alive. Poisonous gases seeped silently through the chambers, suffocating miners before they even realized they were in danger. Others simply collapsed from exhaustion, their bodies pushed beyond their limits. Those who perished underground were often carried out hastily, if they were carried out at all. Many were buried in unmarked graves, their names lost to time, their stories silenced by the clamor of the gold rush. But Dahlonega has a way of remembering what history tries to forget. Visitors to the Consolidated Gold Mine report strange, unsettling experiences that cannot be explained. Deep within the tunnels, where no modern mining has been done for decades, the sound of pickaxes striking stone can sometimes be heard. The steady, rhythmic clink of metal on rock echoes through the chambers, growing louder and fainter as if unseen workers still chip away in the darkness. Guides who hear it insist that no one is in those tunnels. Yet the sounds continue, as though the spirits of miners are condemned to work forever in pursuit of riches they never found. The air in the mine carries mysteries of its own. Guests speak of sudden gusts of freezing wind rushing up the shafts, whipping past their faces and chilling them to the bone. These bursts of air appear without warning and vanish just as quickly, even when the tunnels are sealed from drafts. Some say the gusts feel like spirits brushing past, hurrying to escape the suffocating chambers where they once drew their final breaths. More disturbing still are the apparitions. Shadowy figures have been spotted moving along the walls of the tunnels, their forms dim and fleeting. Witnesses describe men in worn clothing, their faces coated in dust, their outlines shimmering in the glow of lantern light before fading into the stone. Some seem to carry tools, their arms swinging in the eternal rhythm of labor. Others stand silently, watching, their hollow eyes fixed on the living who now intrude upon their resting place. For many, These sightings are too vivid to dismiss as tricks of the imagination. One of the most chilling accounts came from a tourist who wandered a few steps away from his group during a tour. He claimed to see a man crouched near the floor, hammering at the rock with a pickaxe. At first, he thought it was a reenactor, staged for effect, till the man lifted his head. His face was pale, covered in grime, and his eyes were lifeless. In the blink of an eye, the figure vanished, leaving only the echo of metal striking stone. Shaken, the tourist rejoined his group, but the sound followed him, faint but persistent, as though the miner had not quite let him go. The energy in the mine is not only tied to labor and death. Some believe the land itself holds a restless spirit. The gold rush that built Dahlonega also drove the forced removal of the Cherokee people from their ancestral lands, culminating in the Trail of Tears. The soil beneath the town carries both the scars of greed and the sorrow of displacement. Visitors often describe a heavy weight in the mine tunnels, a feeling of despair that cannot be attributed to the darkness alone. Above ground, Dahlonega may look serene, its square-lined with historic buildings and flowers blooming in the spring. But locals know that the past lingers. Ghost tours through the town often end at the old mine, where guides tell stories of phantom footsteps echoing in the night, of lantern lights bobbing through the hills long after the last miner was laid to rest, and of voices carried on the wind, speaking in languages long silenced. Despite its tragic history, the Consolidated Gold Mine remains a place of fascination. Visitors descend into its depths to marvel at the scale of human ambition, to touch the veins of gold still glittering in the walls. Yet few leave without feeling that they've brushed against something beyond the ordinary. For some, it is the chill of cold air on their neck. For others, it is the sound of unseen pickaxes or the fleeting glimpse of a dusty figure in the dark. The mine is both a monument to the hunger for wealth and a tomb for those who paid the ultimate price. In the silence of the tunnels, the echoes of their suffering live on. The men who labored there, whose bodies lie in unmarked graves, seem unwilling to rest, their spirits still bound to the earth they once carved. Dahlonega may shine today as the Azalea City, a place of beauty and peace, but beneath its charm lies a shadow. The gold that drew thousands here may have glittered brightly, but it came at a cost that time cannot erase. The miners remain, their work unfinished, their presence carved into the very stone. In the darkness of the Consolidated Gold Mine, history whispers. The walls remember, and if you listen closely enough, you just might hear the ghosts of Dahlonega still striking at the earth, chasing gold that forever eludes them. In the heart of Dahlonega's historic square stands a building as old as the gold rush itself. The Dahlonega Gold Museum, housed in the original Lumpkin County Courthouse, built in 1836, is a proud reminder of the city's golden beginnings. Its red brick walls, sturdy columns, and central clock tower give it the appearance of timeless dignity. By day, it tells the story of the first U.S. gold rush, displaying artifacts and relics of a bygone era. But by night, the building becomes something very different. Behind its dignified facade lingers a history soaked in judgment, punishment, and restless spirits. The courthouse was the center of law and order in a town consumed by greed. During the frenzy of the gold rush, Dahlonega swelled with prospectors, traders, gamblers, and outlaws. Gold brought fortune to some and desperation to others, and the courthouse was often the stage where those fortunes were lost forever. Trials for theft, fraud, and murder filled its chambers, with sentences that ranged from fines to imprisonment, sometimes to death. Legend has it that thieves and criminals, caught stealing gold or cheating their fellow miners, were sentenced to hang right in the courthouse courtyard. The gallows stood as a grim reminder that justice, in those days, was swift and merciless. Some say the bodies of the condemned swung in the mountain breeze for hours. The crowd gathered to watch as justice was carried out. Whether guilty or innocent, those who faced the rope often met their end in fear, anger, or denial. It is said their spirits never left. Today, visitors to the museum often feel the weight of that history pressing down on them. In the basement, where records and supplies were once kept, many report hearing the clatter of chains rattling against stone. The sound echoes faintly in the dark corners, as though shackled prisoners are still waiting below, condemned men bound by iron and time. Staff who lock up at night sometimes refuse to linger in the basement alone, unnerved by the unmistakable metallic scrape of chains dragging across the floor. The courtroom itself is another hotspot of activity. Tour guides and museum workers tell of a deep, disembodied voice that sometimes booms through the empty chamber. The word is always the same, repeated 3 times with chilling finality. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Some believe it is the echo of an old judge whose spirit remains tethered to the place, eternally delivering verdicts. Others think it is a manifestation of the countless lives destroyed within those walls, the word guilty forever etched into the building's memory. Visitors sitting quietly in the courtroom have reported feeling a sudden chill, or hearing the sound of footsteps pacing back and forth near the judge's bench. And then, there is the clock. Perched atop the old courthouse, its face has watched over the square for nearly 2 centuries. But according to legend, something strange happens at midnight. Every time the hands strike 12, the clock stops. For a few eerie minutes, time itself seems to hold its breath before the mechanism lurches back to life. Locals say it is the spirits of those who died at the courthouse exerting their will, halting the flow of time in the very place where their lives were cut short. The phenomenon is not confined to the stroke of midnight. On stormy nights, the clock has been known to falter, its hands freezing in place while thunder rolls through the mountains. Those who live near the square swear they've seen the clock glowing faintly, as though lit from within, even when no lights shine in the tower. Some claim the clock is more than a machine. It is a reminder, a warning, and perhaps even a prison, trapping restless souls within its endless ticking. Beyond the clock and courtroom, subtle hauntings permeate the entire building. Visitors often feel as though they are being watched as they move through the exhibits. Portraits of stern-faced judges and officials seem to follow guests with their eyes. Doors open and close without explanation, and faint whispers drift through the corridors. On occasion, children visiting with their families have pointed to empty corners of the room, insisting they see men in chains or figures dressed in old-fashioned clothing. One particularly chilling story comes from a janitor who worked at the museum years ago. While cleaning late at night, he heard the unmistakable sound of boots walking across the wooden floor of the courtroom. Believing a trespasser had entered, he called out, but no one answered. The footsteps continued, measured and deliberate, until they stopped directly behind him. When he turned, the room was empty, but the air was icy cold. He quit his job soon after, unwilling to face the courthouse spirits again. Despite its unsettling reputation, the Dahlonega Gold Museum remains a place of fascination. Tourists are drawn to its rich history, its displays of gold nuggets, mining tools, and artifacts from the early 1800s. Yet many who visit leave with more than just knowledge of Georgia's gold rush. They leave with stories of chills, strange sounds, and the feeling that the courthouse is very much alive. For some, the hauntings are a reminder of the darker side of history. The gold rush was not only a time of prosperity, but also one of greed, lawlessness, and human suffering. The courthouse witnessed it all: the trials, the sentences, the punishments, and those memories have seeped into the very bricks and mortar. The Dahlonega Gold Museum stands as both a testament to the town's golden past and a monument to the souls who never escaped it. By day, it is a charming museum filled with stories of discovery and fortune. By night, it becomes something else, a place where chains still rattle, where the word guilty reverberates through empty halls, and where the march of time pauses each midnight, as though the spirits of the condemned refuse to let it move forward. For those who visit, the building offers more than history. It offers a chance to glimpse the shadows of justice, the remnants of lives cut short, and the eerie truth that some sentences are never overturned. The clock may start again after midnight, but for the restless souls of the old courthouse, time has already stopped and it may never begin again. The Smith McDowell House rises quietly from a hilltop in Asheville, North Carolina, its red brick walls and arched windows giving it the solemn dignity of a time long past. Built in the 1840s, it is the oldest surviving brick home in the city, a mansion that once symbolized prosperity in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Its stately presence tells of wealth, society, and refinement. But behind its walls, history lingers. For the Smith McDowell House is more than a museum of Southern life. It is also a place where whispers travel through the halls, where shadows move when no one is there, and where the dead may still walk among the living. The house was built for James McConnell Smith, a wealthy businessman whose enterprises included a tannery, a store, and a stagecoach line. Smith was one of Asheville's most influential figures, and his family lived in the mansion for generations. With its expansive rooms, tall ceilings, and ornate woodwork, the home was a display of success. But as with many old Southern estates, prosperity was built on the suffering of others. Enslaved laborers maintained the house, worked the land, and lived in harsh conditions. Their stories, often unspoken, but forever imprinted on the property. Later, the home passed to Maria Smith and her husband, Major William Wallace McDowell, a Confederate officer. During the Civil War, the house became a gathering place for officers and local leaders. It is said that the echoes of that time debates over the war, the weight of loss, and the presence of death still cling to the rooms. Soldiers who never returned from battle, servants whose lives were stolen by bondage, and family members burdened by grief all left traces that seem unwilling to fade. Today, the Smith McDowell House is preserved as a museum, educating visitors about Asheville's history. But for those who step inside, the lessons are not always limited to artifacts and exhibits. Strange occurrences ripple through the mansion. Guests and staff report hearing footsteps pacing along the hardwood floors when the house is empty. The creak of boots climbing the staircase echoes in the stillness, yet no figure appears. At times, doors open or shut on their own, as though unseen hands are moving through the rooms, still tending to unfinished business. One of the most common experiences is the sound of voices. Soft conversations drift down hallways, muffled but persistent, as though a gathering is taking place in another room. When staff follow the sounds, they find the rooms empty, the air heavy with silence. Some describe hearing a man's stern voice calling out orders, perhaps a remnant of Major McDowell's presence. Others speak of a woman's gentle tone, almost like a lullaby, heard in the nursery where generations of children once slept. Apparitions have also been reported. A figure dressed in a gray Confederate uniform has been seen standing by a window, gazing out over the grounds as though still keeping watch. Visitors who have encountered him describe a solemn, heavy air, as if the soldier is bound by duty that never ended. In the lower levels of the house, shadowy forms appear in the corners of vision, figures of men and women moving quickly, faces obscured, as though trying to remain unseen. Many believe these are the restless spirits of the enslaved, who once worked and suffered here. Their presence a reminder of lives lived in silence. The bedrooms carry their own stories. In one upstairs chamber, staff have reported the distinct scent of pipe smoke lingering in the air. Though smoking has long been forbidden inside the museum, the smell appears suddenly, strong and unmistakable, before vanishing just as quickly. Some believe it is James McConnell Smith himself, still haunting the home he built. In another bedroom, visitors have described feeling a sudden pressure on the bed beside them, as if someone invisible has sat down, watching quietly in the shadows. The parlor, once the center of social gatherings, is often filled with an unexplained chill. Guests describe a heaviness there, as though the room remembers the laughter, arguments, and grief it once held. On quiet days, faint strains of music are sometimes heard, notes of a piano playing somewhere in the house. Yet the mansion contains no working piano. Those who hear the melodies say it is both beautiful and haunting, a fragment of a song long forgotten. Perhaps the most unsettling stories come from the basement. It is here that the enslaved people of the household lived and worked, cooking, cleaning, and serving, while hidden from the grandeur above. Visitors in the basement often describe a sense of dread, an oppressive energy They grow stronger the longer they remain. Some hear the clatter of dishes, the scrape of chairs, or even the faint sound of chains. Others feel sudden bursts of cold air, brushing against their skin, as if someone has passed close by. For many, the basement is not simply a historic site. It's a place where the anguish of the past is still alive. Caretakers of the house speak of nights when alarms are triggered without cause. Lights flicker in patterns too deliberate to be electrical issues, and motion detectors are set off in empty rooms. Some staff members refuse to be alone in the house after dark, convinced that the spirits within do not rest. Despite the haunting tales, the Smith McDowell house is not remembered with fear so much as with reverence. Its ghosts are a part of its history, just as real as the furniture, portraits, and artifacts that fill its rooms. They are the echoes of a family's triumphs and sorrows, of soldiers who fought and died, of enslaved men and women whose stories must not be forgotten. For modern visitors, the house offers more than a glimpse into Asheville's past. It offers an encounter with memory itself, a reminder that walls absorb the lives lived within them, and that some presences remain long after their bodies are gone. The footsteps, the voices, the apparitions, all of them are fragments of history refusing to fade away. The Crybaby Gold Mine, tucked away in the Georgia hills, is one of the oldest continuously operated gold mines in the United States. First opened in 1845, the mine has witnessed nearly 2 centuries of human ambition, backbreaking labor, and tragedy. Today, it functions as both a working mine and a tourist attraction, offering visitors the chance to pan for gold and step back into history. But beneath the surface lies something far darker. The Crybaby Mine may glimmer with the promise of gold, but its tunnels echo with whispers of the dead. From the very beginning, the mine demanded its price. Men risked everything in their pursuit of fortune. With only lanterns and crude tools to guide them, they descended into labyrinthine shafts carved deep into the earth. The work was exhausting and unforgiving. Many died in collapses, crushed by falling rock when supports gave way. Others succumbed to mercury poisoning, their bodies slowly failing after exposure to the toxic metal used in the refining process, and some simply vanished into the maze of tunnels. Their bodies never recovered, their final moments lost in the suffocating dark. The mine became a tomb for many, and the earth itself seemed to swallow their stories. Families mourned but often never knew the truth of what happened. Those unmarked deaths left their mark, and even now, visitors swear the spirits of those miners remain, bound to the gold they never found. Tour groups that descend into the mine today often return with stories that chill the blood. Whispers float through the darkness, soft and deliberate, as though voices are calling out names. Some tourists have admitted hearing their own names whispered back to them, though no one else in the group had spoken. Others hear tools clattering against stone, the rhythmic clink of a pickaxe, or the rattle of buckets being hauled along tracks. Yet when they search the shafts, they find only silence and shadows. The most unnerving phenomenon is the sound of children's laughter. Guides insist that no children are allowed into the deepest parts of the mine. Yet the faint, high-pitched giggles drift through the tunnels, echoing from places no living child could reach. Some say these sounds are the spirits of children who once worked the mines alongside their fathers, their small bodies put to labor in the same deadly conditions. Others believe the laughter is something else entirely, something that mimics innocence to draw the living deeper into the dark. There are also accounts of encounters too vivid to ignore. One family recalled a tour where their flashlight suddenly died in a narrow passageway. The group stood in complete darkness, the air thick with dust and silence. When the flashlight flickered back to life, the beam revealed a man standing only inches away from their child. He wore a tattered miner's helmet, his face streaked with grime, his eyes nothing but black voids. His mouth gaped open in a silent scream, as though trapped in an endless moment of terror. And then, just as quickly, he vanished. The family ended their tour immediately and swore they would never return. Other visitors described seeing figures at the edge of the light, their outlines rough and indistinct, disappearing as soon as they are approached. A few have reported cold hands brushing against their arms, or the sensation of someone tugging at their clothing in the tunnels. One guide admitted that he refuses to lead groups into certain shafts after dark, claiming he once heard footsteps behind him, though he was alone. When he turned, a shadowy figure darted into the rock wall itself, leaving nothing but the echo of its retreat. The mine's reputation for hauntings extends beyond its tunnels. At night, locals say strange lights can be seen flickering near the entrances, as though lanterns are still carried by men who never returned home. On quiet evenings, the metallic strike of tools rings faintly in the air above ground, as though the mine refuses to rest even when no living hand works it. Some believe these sounds are not just echoes of the past, but active spirits still bound to their labor, cursed to swing their tools forever in search of gold. The Crybaby mine is a place where ambition and tragedy are inseparably entwined. Gold promised wealth, but for many it delivered only suffering. The spirits that remain are not gentle, they are restless, heavy with unfinished business. They call out in whispers, rattle chains and tools, and make their presence felt in the cold gusts of air that rush through sealed passages. Even the bravest visitors admit to feeling the weight of eyes watching them as they move deeper underground. The walls seem to close in, the air growing heavier with every step. By the time they resurface into daylight, many speak of a relief so sharp it feels like escaping something that wanted to keep them below. For some, the experience lingers long after they leave, the sound of laughter in their dreams, the memory of whispers in their ear when no one else was near. The Crybaby gold mine thrives today as a piece of living history, where tourists can pan for flecks of gold and imagine the rush that once consumed an entire region. But those who step into the tunnels soon learn that history has sharp edges. It is not just a story of fortune and discovery, but of lives lost, bodies buried in darkness, and spirits left behind. The whispers, the laughter, the apparitions, they are reminders that the mine still belongs to the dead as much as it does to the living. For every ounce of gold pulled from its veins, a price was paid in blood, sweat, and human life. And perhaps that is why the spirits remain. They are the voices of miners who never escaped, their presence carved into the stone, their cries echoing endlessly in the dark. In the Crybaby gold mine, the past is not silent. It whispers, it watches, and sometimes it screams. The old governor's mansion in Milledgeville stands as one of the finest examples of Greek revival architecture in the South. Its towering white columns and stately facade give the impression of timeless dignity, a symbol of Georgia's history and power. Built in 1839, it served as the official residence for the state's governors for more than 3 decades. By day, it now functions as a museum, educating visitors about Georgia's past. But when the crowds leave and the doors close, the mansion tells a different story, one filled with grief, shadows, and the restless spirit of a young girl who never truly left. During the Civil War, Governor Joseph E. Brown resided here with his family. Brown was one of Georgia's most influential leaders, guiding the state through the turbulent years of secession and conflict. But while he worked in the halls of power, tragedy struck his household. In 1861, his daughter Addie, just 16 years old, fell ill with typhoid fever. Despite the best care available, she succumbed to the disease, leaving her family shattered. Her death cast a long shadow over the mansion, and many believe her spirit still lingers within its walls. Staff members and visitors alike claim that Addie haunts the 3rd floor of the mansion, where she once spent much of her time. Her presence is most often felt in the nursery and adjoining rooms. A soft humming, like a child's lullaby, drifts through the air when no one is there. The sound has been reported by multiple people over the years, each describing the same gentle, haunting melody. Some believe it is Addie, still humming to her dolls as she once did in life. The toys in the nursery seem to have a life of their own. Staff who carefully arrange them for display often return the next day to find them moved. A rocking horse shifts position, a doll is turned to face a different direction, or blocks appear scattered across the floor. One of the most chilling incidents was caught on security camera late at night. A rubber ball, part of the exhibit, rolled slowly down the hallway, bouncing softly against the wall before coming to rest. No one was near it, and no drafts or vibrations could explain the movement. For those who saw the footage, it was undeniable proof that something or someone still plays in the mansion. During renovations, workers uncovered a disturbing artifact in the attic, Addie's favorite doll. It had been stored away for decades, its dress faded, its hair matted with age. But what made the discovery unsettling was its face. The doll's glass eyes had been scratched out, leaving only empty sockets. No one knows whether this was the result of age, mistreatment, or something far stranger. Yet, ever since the doll was found, activity in the mansion seems to have intensified. Staff reported more frequent sounds of footsteps, more unexplained movements of toys, and a stronger sense of being watched on the upper floors. Stormy nights bring their own terrors. When the wind howls through the trees and rain lashes against the windows, the mansion grows especially active. Several caretakers swear they have heard the faint sound of a child crying in the nursery, the sobs rising and falling with heartbreaking clarity. Some have entered the room only to find it empty, the cries vanishing the moment they cross the threshold. Others claim to have seen the faint outline of a girl in a white dress standing by the window, her face turned toward the storm outside. In the next instant, she disappears. Apparitions of Addie are rare but unforgettable. Visitors touring the mansion have reported seeing a fleeting figure at the end of the hallway, long hair flowing, a delicate dress trailing behind. She often appears on the staircase or near the windows, as though searching for something she cannot find. Those who encounter her describe an overwhelming sense of sadness, a wave of grief that lingers long after the vision fades. But Addie is not the only presence said to haunt the old governor's mansion. Some believe the spirits of others who lived and died within its walls remain as well. The staff has heard heavy footsteps echoing from the governor's chambers late at night, the sound of a man pacing, doors open and close with no explanation, and shadows flit across the rooms, vanishing when approached. These manifestations are unsettling, but it is Addie's spirit that seems to dominate the mansion. Her innocence and tragedy woven into its very foundation. The house itself contributes to the eerie atmosphere. Its cavernous rooms, tall ceilings, and winding staircases seem to hold sound in unusual ways, amplifying the smallest creak or whisper. Even in daylight, visitors often remark that the mansion feels heavy, as though the past presses down upon the present. At night, when the halls are dim and silent, that weight becomes nearly unbearable. Ghost hunters and paranormal investigators who have visited the site have captured unexplained phenomena. Audio recordings picked up faint humming, even when no one was on the third floor. Photographs revealed strange orbs of light, and, in one chilling image, what appeared to be the outline of a child sitting in a chair in the nursery. EMF meters and thermal cameras registered spikes in activity around the toys, particularly near the doll found in the attic. For the people of Milledgeville, the old governor's mansion is a treasured landmark, a window into the state's history. But for those who work within it, it is also a reminder that history is never truly gone. Addie Brown's life was cut tragically short, and her spirit, bound by sorrow and innocence, seems unwilling to leave the place she once called home. Visitors come to learn about Georgia's past, but many leave with more than just knowledge of politics and architecture. They leave with chills down their spine, memories of whispers and empty halls, or the sound of a child's sobs echoing faintly behind them. The old governor's mansion is more than a museum. It is a house of memory, where the laughter and tears of a young girl still echo, where toys roll across the floor without a hand to touch them, and where, on stormy nights, the cries of Addie Brown remind us that some griefs never fade. The Lockerly Arboretum in Milledgeville is known today as a place of beauty and peace. Spanning 80 acres, its winding trails, blooming gardens, and towering trees create the illusion of serenity. Visitors stroll through the grounds to admire azaleas, magnolias, and dogwoods, or to enjoy the reflection of the sky in quiet ponds. Adjacent to the old governor's mansion, the Arboretum seems a natural extension of Georgia's history and charm. But beneath its blossoms and shaded paths lies a past far darker than its surface suggests. Before it became a garden and public preserve, the land was a working plantation. Here, enslaved men, women, and children lived and labored under brutal conditions. They cleared the fields, tended the crops, cooked in the kitchens, and maintained the grand house that once stood as a symbol of wealth. Their lives were marked by hardship, violence, and sorrow. Many died here, their bodies laid to rest in unmarked graves scattered across the property. The earth of the Arboretum is quite literally soaked in the memory of suffering, and it seems unwilling to let that history fade away. Today, visitors sometimes feel that history pressing against them as they walk the trails. Shadowy figures are seen moving among the trees at dusk dark, outlines that glide across the path before dissolving into the undergrowth. Hikers describe catching movement out of the corner of their eye, turning quickly to find nothing but empty woods. Yet the sensation of being watched lingers. These figures are often silent, but their presence is undeniable, as though the enslaved still walk the trails they once trod in life. On quiet evenings, when the wind moves through the trees, some visitors claim to hear whispers. The words are indistinct, carried faintly on the air, but they do not sound like English. Scholars who have investigated believe the voices may be fragments of African dialects once spoken by those forced into bondage here. To hear them is to be reminded that this land, now marketed for beauty, was once a site of unimaginable pain and survival. The Arboretum holds countless stories of the unexplained. One chilling account comes from a woman who was walking a wooden bridge that crosses one of the streams on the property. Halfway across, she felt something cold seize her ankle. Startled, she looked down, expecting to see a root or branch tangled around her foot. Instead, there was nothing. The grip tightened for a moment, then released, leaving her shaken and pale. Later, she admitted she felt as though someone had been trying to hold her back, or perhaps pull her down into the water. The ruins of the old slave quarters are the most active part of the property. The small brick foundations and crumbling walls serve as a haunting reminder of the lives once lived there. Cameras brought into the area often malfunction. Batteries drain in minutes, images blur, and recordings are corrupted without explanation. Paranormal investigators have reported hearing faint voices in this spot. On one recording, a whisper was captured clearly, saying, "We are still here." For many, it was both heartbreaking and chilling, an acknowledgement from the spirits themselves that they remain bound to the land. Staff and caretakers of the Arboretum do not openly speak of these hauntings. The site is promoted for its gardens, its walking trails, and its educational programs, not for ghost stories. Yet those who have worked there longest know the truth. Groundskeepers speak of tools being moved when left unattended, of footsteps crunching in the gravel behind them when no one else is near. Some refuse to work late into the evening, claiming the shadows grow too heavy after dark, and the voices too insistent. Nighttime in the Arboretum carries its own terrors. Visitors on ghost tours in Milledgeville sometimes linger outside the gates, where they claim to see lantern-like lights drifting between the trees. Others hear faint singing, mournful spirituals carried on the breeze. Once, a group reported seeing several figures standing together in the moonlight near the edge of the woods. They were dressed in ragged clothing, heads bowed, silent. When the group approached, the figures dissolved into the night. The weight of sorrow here is palpable. Many who visit describe a heaviness in the air, as though grief itself lingers between the leaves. Some experience sudden waves of sadness, tears welling in their eyes without explanation. Others feel surges of anger or despair, emotions so strong they cannot be their own. Paranormal experts suggest these are impressions left behind by the enslaved echoes of the suffering and resilience that once defined their lives. The Arboretum's beauty masks its history, but the spirits seem determined not to be forgotten. They make their presence known in whispers, in shadows, in the chill of an unseen hand. They remind the living that beneath the flowers and pathways lie the graves of people who had no voice in life, but who speak still in death. Perhaps the most unsettling truth is that the Arboretum does not advertise its hauntings. It prefers to present itself as a place of learning and tranquility. Yet those who have felt the grasp of invisible hands, who have heard voices call out from the ruins, or who have seen shadowy figures vanish into the woods, know better. The past cannot be buried beneath azaleas and oak trees. It breathes in the soil, it whispers in the wind, and it waits in the silence of night. The Lockerly Arboretum is a place of contradictions, lush beauty, and quiet horror. It is a sanctuary of nature, but also a memorial to lives lost and forgotten. Visitors may come seeking peace, but many leave with a chill in their bones, convinced they have brushed against something beyond this world. For in the ruins, in the shadows, and in the whispers on the wind, the voices of the past are still here, and they are not silent. The Medical College of Georgia in Augusta is now part of Augusta University, a respected institution devoted to training doctors and advancing medicine. Its modern reputation is one of science, progress, and healing. But buried beneath the clean halls and laboratories is a history far darker one, steeped in stolen bodies, dissection by candlelight, and restless spirits that refuse to rest. In the 1800s, the study of medicine faced a dilemma. Aspiring doctors needed cadavers to learn anatomy, yet the supply of legally obtained bodies was almost non-existent. Religious and cultural taboos made it nearly impossible to acquire corpses for study. So schools like the Medical College of Georgia turned to desperate measures. They relied on resurrectionists, men paid to dig up freshly buried bodies under the cover of night and deliver them to the college. The practice was an open secret. Families of the recently deceased kept vigil at gravesides, guarding their loved ones' remains for days, fearing the shovel and lantern of the resurrectionists. Still, the grave robbers often succeeded. Corpses were smuggled into the anatomy labs through hidden doors and tunnels, where students dissected them in dim, poorly ventilated rooms. Sometimes the bodies still bore the marks of hurried burials. Others were not even fully cold. It was a grim necessity of medical education, but one that left behind echoes of suffering and desecration. The old dissection rooms carried the stench of decay, the air thick with smoke from oil lamps and the metallic temps of blood. Students, some barely more than boys, cut into human flesh, while their professors lectured over the cadavers. There was no refrigeration and no embalming fluid to preserve the bodies for long. Dissections were done quickly, in heat and shadow, before rot set in. For many, it was their first intimate encounter with death. For the dead, it was a second violation, the peace of their graves stolen for the sake of science. It is said that not all of those who were brought to the college left in silence. Today, strange things are still reported in the oldest parts of the medical school. Staff walking the corridors at night hear low, guttural moans drifting from the rooms that once served as dissection labs. The sounds echo faintly, as though coming from deep underground. Janitors who clean the halls late at night sometimes refuse to go near those rooms, convinced that something lingers in the air, a mix of sorrow and anger, vibrating like a living presence. In the morgue, shadows are often seen moving against the walls, long and twisted, though no one is nearby. Visitors report feeling watched, the hair on their arms rising, as if unseen eyes track their every movement. More than one staff member has sworn they've seen a figure lying on a gurney or table, only to vanish when approached. One of the most terrifying stories comes from a janitor who was working alone late at night. He claimed he entered one of the old autopsy rooms and saw a body lying on a metal table. Assuming it was a medical dummy left for training, he went about his work. But as he turned to leave, he heard the sound of movement behind him. Slowly, the corpse sat upright, its head lolling unnaturally to one side, its eyes, dark and empty, fixed on him. The janitor froze in terror before bolting from the room. When he returned with others, the table was empty. No body had been scheduled for that day. He never worked another night shift again. Another unsettling incident was reported by a longtime employee who discovered something waiting for him in his locker. When he opened the metal door, a scalpel lay neatly on the shelf inside. Its blade glistened, wet with what appeared to be fresh blood. But no autopsies or dissections had been scheduled that week, and no instruments had been logged out of storage. Security cameras revealed nothing. The man insisted he had locked his locker himself, and no one else had access. To this day, he believes the scalpel was placed there by something not of this world. For many, the atmosphere in the older sections of the college is almost unbearable. The walls seem to hold onto the memory of countless dissections, of stolen bodies and desecrated graves. Students have reported sudden chills sweeping through the labs, as if a cold hand had brushed across their skin. Others describe hearing whispers in the dark, voices murmuring just out of reach, as though the dead are trying to speak their names. Even those who do not believe in ghosts cannot deny the weight of history in the building. The knowledge that men and women were stolen from their resting places, their bodies cut apart in secret, leaves a scar that no renovation or modernization can erase. The spirits that haunt the college are not angry at science itself. They are angry at the theft of dignity, the violation of their graves, the erasure of their identities. Locals in Augusta still whisper about the tunnels once used to transport bodies into the college. Some say they remain beneath the city, sealed but not forgotten, carrying with them the echoes of cries and the dragging of chains. Others believe the spirits of those taken from their graves wander not only the school but the surrounding streets. Forever searching for the rest they were denied. The Medical College of Georgia stands today as a modern institution, a beacon of learning. But, at its core, it is also a monument to a time when the line between necessity and desecration blurred. The shadows in the morgue, the whispers in the lab, the moans in the night, they are all reminders that the pursuit of knowledge sometimes leaves ghosts in its wake. Those who study there may not always see them, but they feel them. The dead, after all, have not forgotten. The Sally Ellis Davis House in Augusta, Georgia, is remembered today as a symbol of resilience and hope. Once the home of Sally Ellis Davis, a pioneering African-American educator, the house later became a community arts center for African-American youth in the early 20th century. It was a place where children gathered to learn music, dance, and theater, a safe haven in a world that often denied them opportunity. Its walls once rang with the sound of piano recitals, laughter, and applause, but tragedy would silence those voices or, perhaps only change them into something the living can no longer fully understand. In 1950, a fire broke out in the house. Accounts vary on how it began. Some say it was an accident caused by faulty wiring. Others claim it started in the kitchen, but what is certain is the devastation it left behind. The fire spread quickly, consuming the wooden beams and filling the rooms with smoke. Several children who had been rehearsing for a performance inside were trapped. Despite frantic attempts to save them, they perished in the flames. Their deaths devastated the community and cast a long shadow over what had once been a place of joy and learning. The house was eventually repaired and preserved, later converted into a museum to honor Sally Ellis Davis and her legacy as an educator. But even as the museum tells her story, another story plays out within its walls. For many believe the spirits of the children who died in the fire never left. Visitors report hearing piano music drifting from the recital hall, soft and halting, as though played by small hands still learning the keys. Yet the piano that sits in the room hasn't been tuned in decades, and no one alive touches it anymore. Staff have walked in on these phantom recitals, only to find the bench empty, the keys unmoving, while the notes fade into silence. For those who hear it, the music is both beautiful and heartbreaking, a reminder of young lives cut short. The sound of laughter is also common in the house. Guests strolling through the museum sometimes stop in their tracks, sure they've heard children giggling somewhere nearby. The laughter drifts down the halls, light and playful, yet it always comes from empty rooms. More than one visitor has admitted to feeling both unsettled and strangely comforted by the sound, as if the children are still at play, oblivious to the tragedy that befell them. One of the most chilling encounters occurred in the ballroom, a room once filled with dancing and celebration. A guest touring the house alone claimed she heard the faint strains of music. Not from the piano this time, but from a phonograph, playing an old waltz. As she entered the ballroom, she saw a group of children twirling together in the center of the floor, their faces lit with joy. For a brief moment, The scene was alive again the way it must have looked in the house's prime. But as she watched, the children faded, their laughter silenced, their forms dissolving into the air, until she stood alone in the empty ballroom. Psychics who have visited the Sally Ellis Davis house believe the children do not realize they are dead. One medium described their presence as bright and full of energy, like sparks that refuse to go out. "They don't know they're dead," she said. "They think they're still rehearsing, still waiting for their recital, still living in the safety of this house." If true, it would explain why their voices and music persist, why they linger not as tormented spirits, but as children unaware that time has passed them by. Yet not all encounters are innocent. A few visitors have reported darker experiences. One man walking the upstairs hall claimed he felt a sudden tug on his shirt, as though a small hand had grabbed him. When he turned, no one was there. Another described feeling the heat of flames while standing in the ballroom, the air suddenly thick with the acrid scent of smoke. It lasted only moments, but he was left shaken, convinced he had briefly stepped into the night of the fire. Equipment brought into the house often malfunctions in strange ways. Cameras shut off unexpectedly, their batteries drained. Recordings capture faint voices, snippets of words, or the sound of children whispering. In one particularly chilling case, an investigator left a recorder in the recital hall overnight. When he played it back, he heard a child's voice say clearly, "Are we ready to start?" followed by the sound of applause. Despite these hauntings, the house retains an atmosphere that many describe as more sorrowful than frightening. The spirits here are not malevolent, they are echoes of innocence, caught between worlds, still bound to the place where they once learned, laughed, and played. The tragedy of their deaths lingers, but so does the warmth of the community that once filled the house with joy. The Sally Ellis Davis house remains a vital piece of Augusta's history. It honors a woman who dedicated her life to education and opportunity, and it reminds visitors of a time when African American children found strength and expression through the arts, even in the face of segregation and hardship. But it also holds the weight of the fire and the children who never walked away from it. For those who step inside today, the experience is unforgettable. Some leave with the memory of piano music echoing faintly in their ears. Others recall the sound of laughter or the fleeting glimpse of children dancing where no one stands. And some leave with a heavy heart, knowing that the spirits of the young remain trapped in innocence, unaware that their lives ended more than 70 years ago. The Sally Ellis Davis house is both a museum and a mausoleum, a place of history, memory, and lingering presence. Its walls still hold the joy of music and the sorrow of flames. And within its halls, the voices of children whisper, play, and sing, reminding all who listen that the past never truly leaves. Stone Mountain Park, just east of Atlanta, is known today as a sprawling tourist attraction. Families ride gondolas to the summit, fireworks light the night sky, and visitors marvel at the massive Confederate carving etched into the granite face. But Stone Mountain is far more than an amusement site. It is a place of immense age and mystery, massive, ancient, and deeply spiritual. And for centuries, it has been surrounded by whispers of curses, hauntings, and warnings from those who say the mountain itself is alive. Geologists believe Stone Mountain formed more than 300 million years ago. A solid dome of granite rising nearly 1,700 feet above sea level. To the Native American tribes who lived in its shadow, it was sacred ground. The Creek and Cherokee considered it a holy site, a place where the spirit world touched the earth. They gathered here for ceremonies, visions, and rituals, treating the mountain with reverence. Some oral traditions described it as a portal, a gateway between worlds, where spirits of ancestors and gods could be seen and heard. Centuries later, enslaved people brought to the plantations of Georgia whispered their own stories of the mountain. Many believed Stone Mountain was a passageway to freedom, not just in life, but in death. They spoke of it as a portal to the spirit world, a place where souls could escape bondage and return to the ancestors. Songs carried those secret beliefs, weaving the mountain into a tapestry of hope and fear. But the most visible mark upon Stone Mountain is the massive Confederate carving, begun in the 1920s. measuring hundreds of feet across. It depicts Jefferson Davis, Robert E. Lee, and Stonewall Jackson on horseback. To some, it is a monument to Southern heritage. To others, it is a scar on a sacred mountain. And to many, it is cursed. Construction of the carving was plagued from the very beginning. Workers died in mysterious accidents. Scaffolding collapsed without warning. Equipment failed at crucial moments, inexplicably breaking down or refusing to function. Explosives detonated too early, killing men who had been trained to handle dynamite. The project dragged on for decades, cursed by delays, misfortune, and tragedy. Even after it was finally completed in 1972, stories of the curse persisted. Some believed the mountain itself resisted the carving, angry at being defaced. Others whisper that the spirits of the land, the ancestors, the enslaved, or even the restless soldiers of the Confederacy, refused to allow peace to settle there. Visitors to Stone Mountain often report seeing ghostly figures on the ridge, especially at night. Dressed in gray uniforms, these phantom soldiers march silently across the summit. Some appear carrying rifles, others waving tattered flags, their faces pale and indistinct. Witnesses say the apparitions move in formation before vanishing into the stone itself. Hikers who have camped nearby tell of waking to the sound of drums and marching feet echoing through the darkness. Though the summit is deserted, the carving itself seems to hold its own secrets. Many visitors claim that when they stand at the base and look up, the eyes of the figures appear to follow them. No matter where they move, the gaze of stone men in gray shifts with them, an unsettling illusion or perhaps something more. At night, when the light is dim, some insist the eyes glow faintly, as though alive. One hiker told a chilling story of climbing Stone Mountain alone near sunset. As he neared the summit, the air grew strangely still. Then, just as he reached the top, he heard a deep, disembodied voice. It spoke clearly, directly, with a message that chilled him to the bone. Leave. This is not your land. He fled down the mountain, shaken and pale, swearing never to return. The summit has long been considered the most dangerous place spiritually. On nights when the moon is full, locals warn against climbing to the top. Some say the mountain awakens then, and the veil between worlds grows thin. Those who ignore the warnings tell of seeing shadows emerging directly from the rock figures that step forward from the granite face, black and formless, drifting across the summit before melting back into the stone. A few claim to have heard voices chanting, or the wails of unseen spirits carried on the wind. Even in the daylight, the mountain radiates a strange energy. Some visitors describe sudden dizziness or nausea when they touch the granite. Others feel bursts of static electricity, their hair standing on end as though the stone itself hums with power. Cameras malfunction, batteries drain in minutes, and photographs often reveal odd streaks of light or faint shapes that no one saw in person. Legends continue to swirl around Stone Mountain. Some say the spirits of native warriors still guard the land, their shadows standing watch at the edges of the forest. Others believe the mountain holds the souls of the enslaved, whispering warnings and prayers through the trees. And still others insist that the Confederate dead themselves haunt the carving, cursed to march forever across the granite they were carved upon. What is undeniable is that Stone Mountain is more than stone. It is a vessel of memory, holding centuries of reverence, violence, and sorrow within its ancient heart. The sacred ceremonies of the tribes, the whispered prayers of the enslaved, the tragedies of the workers, and the burden of the carving all have left their mark. For those who climb its slopes today, the experience is not always one of beauty. Many feel an oppressive weight, as though the mountain itself resents their presence. Others feel watched, followed by unseen eyes from the woods or the carving above. And for the few who dare to stand on the summit at midnight under the light of the full moon, the stories say the mountain will show its true nature. Shadows will rise from the stone, ghostly soldiers will march in silence, and the voices of the past will whisper what the living are not meant to hear. Stone Mountain Park may be a place of picnics and fireworks by day, but by night, it is something else entirely, an ancient, haunted monument where the past is never silent and the mountain itself remembers. The Ritz Theater in Tifton, Georgia, stands as a striking piece of Art Deco history. Opened in 1938, its glowing marquee and bold architecture made it a centerpiece of entertainment in the small southern town. Families flocked to the theater for movies, plays, and concerts. For nearly 2 decades, the Ritz was alive with laughter, applause, and the magic of Hollywood's golden age. But in 1955, the theater became the site of a tragedy so devastating that its echoes are still felt within its walls. It was a warm summer evening, and Rebel Without a Cause was playing to a packed house. James Dean's smoldering performance had already captured the attention of audiences everywhere. And in Tifton, the Ritz was no exception. Every seat was filled, the smell of popcorn heavy in the air, the hum of anticipation thick as the lights dimmed. But partway through the screening, disaster struck. A fire broke out in the projection booth, sparked by faulty wiring and fed by the flammable reels of film. Within minutes, smoke billowed into the auditorium, filling the air with choking fumes. Panic spread like wildfire. Patrons surged toward the exits, but the crowd became a stampede. In the chaos, 23 people lost their lives, some from smoke inhalation. Others trampled in the desperate rush to escape. The tragedy shook Tifton to its core. The theater was rebuilt, its exterior restored to its former glamour. But for many, the memory of that night never faded, and some believe the souls of those who perished never left at all. Staff working in the theater after hours often speak of screams that pierced the silence, faint but unmistakable. They echo through the auditorium during late-night showings, particularly when silent films are played. One usher swore he heard a woman's shriek so loud and raw that he dropped his flashlight tonally to find himself completely alone. The seats around him were empty, yet the echoes of terror still hung in the air. Others described the seats themselves as restless. Even when no patrons are present, the chairs creak and shift as if invisible bodies are settling into them. Some rock slightly, rising and falling with phantom weight. Projectionists, working alone, have glanced down to see rows of chairs folded back, as though an audience had just taken their places. Yet, when the lights are turned on, the seats sit empty, waiting. One of the most chilling stories comes from a projectionist in the 1970s. He was threading film through the projector when movement below caught his eye. Looking out into the auditorium, he saw a young girl standing in the aisle. She wore a 1950s dress, her hair tied back with a ribbon, her small hands clutching a popcorn box. At first, he thought she had gotten lost, but as he leaned closer, she turned her head toward him. Her eyes were wide, her face pale, and then just like smoke she vanished into the air. Renovations over the years have only deepened the mystery. Contractors working behind the stage uncovered a child's shoe tucked away beneath the floorboards. It was small, worn, and charred, the leather darkened by fire. No one could say for certain if it belonged to one of the victims, but the discovery sent shivers through the crew. That night, several workers refused to remain inside the theater after dark. They claimed to hear the sound of children laughing faintly in the wings, only for the laughter to turn into coughing and sobbing before fading into silence. The lobby, too, carries its own strange activity. Staff locking up late at night often report the faint smell of smoke lingering in the air, though no source can be found. Others describe hearing the steady click of heels across the tile floor, approaching from behind only to turn and find themselves alone. Some even swear the glass doors of the lobby rattle, as if struck by unseen hands, echoing the desperate pounding of that fateful night. Locals who attend shows at the Ritz today sometimes leave with stories of their own. A couple sitting near the back once felt the seat between them sink down, as if someone had sat beside them. The pressure lingered for the length of the scene, only to lift suddenly. When they turned, the chair was empty. Another patron claimed to feel a hand brush across her shoulder, gentle but unmistakably real. She spun around in confusion, her heart pounding, but the row behind her was vacant. The balcony is said to be the most haunted section of the theater. Ushers closing it off after shows often catch glimpses of figures lingering in the shadows, watching silently. Some appear in period clothing from the 1950s, a man in a suit, a woman in a flared skirt, a boy with his hair slicked neatly back. They remain for only seconds before fading, leaving nothing but a cold draft and the echo of footsteps on the old wooden floor. Psychics who have visited the Ritz believe the spirits remain trapped in a loop, reliving the chaos of the fire over and over. Some say that children, in particular, are unaware they ever died. Their laughter, footsteps, and songs suggest they are still playing in the aisles, waiting for the movie to begin. Others, however, carry the terror of that night with them, the screams, the cries, and the frantic rush for the doors. The Ritz Theater stands today as both a monument to history and a reminder of tragedy. Its bright lights and gleaming marquee welcome audiences once more, but behind the glamour, the shadows of the past remain. The seats still shift with unseen weight. The piano in the recital room is sometimes heard softly playing, though no one touches it. And in the dark, the smell of smoke lingers, reminding all who enter of the night when fire consumed the theater. For those who attend a show at the Ritz, the experience may be more than just a trip to the movies. Some will laugh, some will cry, and some may leave with a story of their own, a brush with a figure from another time, a sound that cannot be explained, or a glimpse of the ghosts that still haunt Tifton's most tragic landmark. The Ritz Theater may shine on the outside, but within its walls, the voices of the dead still echo, refusing to let the town forget. The Harris Taylor Plantation in Eatonton, Georgia, sits in ruin, a decaying reminder of an era when wealth and elegance were built upon unimaginable suffering. Once, it was the pride of one of the wealthiest families in the region. Its sprawling fields stretched as far as the eye could see, worked from dawn until dusk by enslaved men, women, and children. Its grand antebellum mansion rose above the land like a monument to prosperity. But beneath the polished veneer of luxury was cruelty, and that cruelty has never truly been silenced. The Harris family, later joined by the Taylors through marriage, amassed their fortune on cotton and tobacco. Their fields yielded endless profits, but at a terrible cost. Enslaved laborers endured relentless toil beneath the hot Georgia sun, driven to exhaustion by overseers who carried whips and chains. Punishments were brutal. Whippings were common, each crack of the leather cutting into flesh as warnings to the rest. Those who dared to resist, those who ran, were often dragged back in chains. Some were hanged from the ancient oak trees that still stand on the property, their bodies left swaying as grim reminders of the price of defiance. When the plantation finally fell into disuse after the Civil War, its fields grew wild, and the mansion began to crumble. Windows shattered, shutters rotted, and vines crept up its once proud columns. Today, the house stands abandoned, its grandeur reduced to dust and silence. But those who dare to step onto the grounds know it is not empty. The spirits of those who suffered here remain, their anguish echoing through the ruins, their shadows lingering in the twilight. Visitors report hearing the sound of chains dragging across the ground at night, the metallic clink carrying across the fields. Sometimes it is followed by the snap of a whip, sharp, cruel, and echoing as though the overseers still prowl the land. More chilling are the cries that rise in the darkness, wails of pain and sorrow carried on the wind. Locals say that, on certain nights, when the air is still, you can hear voices begging, sobbing, or praying for mercy, as if the plantation's past is replaying itself over and over again. As dusk falls, figures appear in the fields. Witnesses describe them as men and women dressed in ragged clothing, their faces gaunt and their eyes hollow. They move slowly, shoulders hunched, as though weighed down by invisible burdens. Sometimes they vanish into the tall grass, only to reappear closer than before. Drivers passing by on the old road at night have seen groups of shadowy figures standing together at the edge of the property, watching silently as headlights sweep across them. When the light passes, they are gone. One of the most chilling pieces of evidence of the plantation's hauntings came from a photographer who visited the site to capture images of its decay. While photographing one of the massive oak trees, he noticed something strange in his pictures. In one image, a man appeared to be hanging by a rope, his body limp, his head slumped to one side. Yet when he looked at the tree itself, there was no rope, no branch even sturdy enough to hold weight in that spot. The apparition was frozen only in the photo, a reminder of the executions that once stained the soil beneath those trees. Inside the mansion, the hauntings grow even more intense. The house is a hollow shell of its former self, its floors warped, its walls peeling, its staircases sagging. But those who enter often feel a suffocating heaviness, as if the house itself remembers. Cold spots linger in the upstairs rooms, icy drafts that cut through the humid Georgia air. Voices whisper in empty halls, unintelligible but insistent, as if speaking from another time. One apparition is said to appear more than any other. A woman in a blood-stained dress. She is most often seen in the upstairs window of the main house, standing perfectly still, staring out across the fields. Witnesses describe her as tall, with long hair falling across her shoulders, her gown soaked through with crimson stains. Some say she was the mistress of the house, struck down during an uprising, her death violent and sudden. Others believe she was one of the enslaved, punished so savagely that her blood marked the walls forever. Whatever her identity, her presence unsettles all who see her. On more than one occasion, passers-by have mistaken her for a living woman trapped in the house, only for rescuers to search the mansion and find nothing. Those brave enough to linger at night tell of footsteps on the staircases, heavy and deliberate, though the stairs themselves groan under no visible weight. Doors creak open and slam shut without cause. A chandelier, long broken, has been seen swaying wildly as if shaken by unseen hands. And in the dead of night, the sound of weeping sometimes drifts from the second floor. Soft and mournful, the cry of someone who does not know they are gone. Paranormal investigators who have entered the plantation often leave shaken. Their equipment malfunctions, batteries drain in minutes, and cameras capture strange anomalies. Glowing orbs, streaks of light, or the hazy outline of figures in doorways. One group recorded a voice that seemed to whisper directly into the microphone. The words chilling in their simplicity. "We are still here." The Haristella plantation stands today as a ruin, crumbling brick by brick, but its true foundation is built on memory. The suffering of the enslaved, the violence of overseers, the terror of executions, and the grief of families torn apart, all of it lingers, woven into the soil and the rotting wood of the mansion. The land itself seems unwilling to forget. For those who visit, the experience is unforgettable. Some leave with photographs that defy explanation, others with the sound of cries ringing in their ears, and still others with the image of a blood-stained woman staring from the window, watching them leave. The plantation may be abandoned, but it is not empty. It remains a place where history refuses to stay buried, where the voices of the past demand to be heard, and where the restless dead still walk among the living. The old jail in Lumpkin, Georgia, is a grim relic of the past. Built in 1906, its brick walls and iron bars were meant to strike fear into the hearts of criminals. For decades, it housed some of the state's most dangerous men whose crimes ranged from theft and assault to murder. But the jail's reputation for cruelty wasn't just about who it confined, was also about how those inside were treated, and the echoes of that cruelty still linger within its cells today. The sheriff who presided over the old jail was known for his harsh methods. Discipline was swift, merciless, and often fatal. Prisoners were beaten until they could no longer stand. Food was withheld as punishment, leaving inmates to waste away in their cells. Solitary confinement was not a matter of days or weeks, but sometimes months. Tiny, pitch-black rooms where men sat in silence until madness consumed them. Some never walked out of solitary alive. The jail was less a place of justice than a chamber of suffering, and its walls absorbed every scream, every plea, every desperate prayer that went unanswered. Among the inmates was a man accused of murdering his wife. His name has been lost to history, but his fate has become part of the legend of the old jail. Placed in cell 13, he was tormented endlessly by guards and fellow inmates alike. He proclaimed his innocence, but no one listened. Day after day, he grew weaker, broken by isolation and abuse. One night, unable to bear it any longer, he fashioned a noose from a strip of cloth and hanged himself from the bars. His body was found swinging in the morning light, his eyes wide, his neck grotesquely twisted. The sheriff, unmoved, ordered him cut down and buried without ceremony. But death did not free him. Cell 13 is now the most active spot in the entire jail. Visitors who dared to step inside often describe a sudden heaviness pressing down on them, as if the very air has thickened. Some feel unseen hands shoving them against the walls, a violent push that leaves bruises, though nothing is there. Others hear faint whispers, low and urgent, seeping from the cracks in the brick. The words are rarely clear, but some claim to have heard a man's voice begging, "Help me, please." The most unnerving phenomenon is the noose. On certain nights, when the jail is silent and the halls are empty, a rope appears to swing gently from the ceiling of cell 13. It sways as though weighted by an invisible body, creaking softly in the dark. And then, just as quickly, it disappears. Paranormal investigators who have tried to capture it on film often find their cameras malfunctioning. Batteries drained in seconds, as if the spirit of the hanged man does not wish to be recorded. Former officers who worked in the building before it was decommissioned have stories of their own. One guard recalled patrolling the hallway outside cell 13 late at night when he froze in his tracks. Standing in the corridor was a man he recognized immediately, not by name, but by the details of his death. His neck was bent at an unnatural angle, his eyes bulging, his face purpled with bruising. The figure stared at him in silence, swaying slightly before vanishing into the wall. The guard resigned not long after, unwilling to spend another night in the jail. But cell 13 is not the only place where spirits stir. Throughout the building, visitors report the sounds of footsteps echoing across the upper floors, even when the jail is empty. Doors slam without warning, and iron bars rattle as though someone is gripping them in anger. In the solitary confinement cells, the atmosphere is nearly unbearable. People who enter describe being overwhelmed by despair, their chests tightening, their thoughts clouded by panic. Some flee within minutes, gasping for air as though the walls themselves are suffocating them. One woman touring the jail claimed she heard the unmistakable sound of sobbing behind a cell door. Certain someone had been left behind. She tugged it open, only to find the room empty. The sobs stopped instantly, replaced by silence so deep it rang in her ears. Another visitor swore he felt something crawl across his shoulders in the dark, cold, clammy hands that tightened around his throat before disappearing. Even outside, the jail projects its aura. Locals passing by after dusk often notice flickers of light in the barred windows, as though lanterns still burn within. Some hear muffled screams carried on the night air. A few have even claimed to see faces pressed against the windows, pale, gaunt, and staring out with hollow eyes. The old jail has become a place of fascination for ghost hunters and thrill seekers. Yet few leave without feeling marked by the experience. Paranormal groups have captured chilling evidence, disembodied voices on recorders, unexplained cold spots, and photographs showing misty figures standing in the cells. One recording captured during an investigation in cell 13 is said to contain a man's anguished voice repeating the word innocent over and over until it fades into static. But even without cameras or gadgets, the energy of the place is undeniable. The cruelty inflicted within those walls has left a scar too deep to heal. Every crack in the brick, every rusted bar, every creaking floorboard carries the memory of pain and fear. The spirits that remain are not gentle, they are angry, desperate, and unwilling to be forgotten. The old jail in Lumpkin may have closed its doors long ago, but it is far from empty. The sheriff's brutality, the prisoner's suffering, and the man who hanged himself in cell 13 have woven themselves into the fabric of the building. Visitors who enter do not just step into history, they step into a place where the dead still cry out, where invisible hands still shove, and where a noose swings in the dark for all who dare to see. In the quiet town of Warm Springs, Georgia, tucked among the pines and rolling hills, stands a modest cottage that holds some of the nation's most powerful memories. It is known as the Little White House, the retreat of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States. Built in 1932, it was meant as a place of rest and healing. where Roosevelt could find relief from the pain of polio in the nearby warm mineral springs. Yet, while the house witnessed moments of peace and reflection, it was also the site of his final breath in April of 1945. And many believe the president never truly left. Roosevelt first came to Warm Springs in 1924, seeking hope in its waters after polio had left him paralyzed from the waist down. He fell in love with the town and its people, and soon built the small home that would serve as his retreat during his presidency. Unlike the grandeur of the White House in Washington, this cottage was simple and unassuming, reflecting Roosevelt's desire for privacy and comfort. But even in this quiet place, history was shaped. It was here he contemplated the challenges of the Great Depression and World War II. And it was here, on April 12, 1945, that he suffered a fatal cerebral hemorrhage while sitting for a portrait. Since that day, stories of Roosevelt's lingering spirit have circulated among staff, visitors, and locals alike. Many report seeing a man in a wheelchair gliding silently down the hallway, his outline faint but unmistakable. Some only glimpsed the back of his head, the curve of his shoulders, the familiar silhouette of the president. Others say he turns his head slightly as he passes, his expression weary but kind, before fading into the shadows of the house he loved. The sounds of the past often echo through the little White House as well. Staff have heard the faint strains of 1940s music, drifting from empty rooms, tunes played on radios during Roosevelt's time. The melodies are soft, sometimes jazzy, sometimes solemn, vanishing as soon as the source is sought. A few have even described hearing Roosevelt's own voice, fragments of his famous fireside chats, murmuring in the still air. Though no radios play and no recordings run, the walls seem to remember. One of the most chilling accounts came from a security guard making his rounds late one night. As he stepped into the living room, he froze. Sitting in a chair by the fireplace was Franklin Roosevelt himself. The fire glowed brightly, though the hearth had been cold for decades. Roosevelt sat quietly, staring into the flames, his face illuminated in the flickering light. The guard stood rooted to the spot, overwhelmed by the sight of the president who had died there so many years before. And then, without a word, the vision faded, leaving only darkness and silence. Roosevelt's loyal Scottish terrier, Fella, is also said to linger at the little White House. Visitors sometimes hear the sharp bark of a small dog echoing through the halls or across the porch. The sound comes suddenly and vanishes just as quickly. Though no animals are present, a few claim to have felt something brush against their legs, as if a friendly dog had passed by. Even in spirit, it seems, Fala remains faithfully by his master's side. But the hauntings are not limited to Roosevelt and his dog. One of the most unsettling reports comes from the figure of Eleanor Roosevelt herself. She was not present at the time of her husband's death, but she carried the weight of his passing deeply. Some visitors say they have seen her figure standing at one of the windows of the house, gazing outward as though searching for someone who never returned. Her hands are clasped, her shoulders bowed, and her face streaked with tears. Witnesses describe her as heartbreak embodied, the image of a woman who gave everything for her country but could not escape personal grief. The staff of the little White House, while respectful of these stories, acknowledge the strange events that occur too often to ignore. Lights flicker in rooms with no electrical faults. Doors open on their own, even when latched. Photographs taken in the house sometimes show strange anomalies, hazy figures in the corners, or faint orbs of light hovering near Roosevelt's wheelchair. For some, these are signs that the spirit of the president had, perhaps those closest to him, still linger within these walls. The atmosphere of the little White House carries a weight difficult to explain. Visitors often remark on the sense of stillness, as though time itself has slowed. Some describe sudden chills, even on warm summer afternoons. Others feel an almost overwhelming sadness in the bedroom where Roosevelt died, a heaviness that settles in the chest and brings tears to the eyes. Guides say many guests leave the room in silence, moved not only by history but by something unspoken, something alive. Paranormal investigators who have visited the property report unusual activity. Recorders capture faint voices, sometimes a man's, deep and steady, other times a woman's soft and sorrowful. Temperature fluctuations occur suddenly, dropping by several degrees in seconds. In one investigation, an electromagnetic meter spiked wildly near the fireplace. Moments before the sound of a crackling fire filled the room, though the hearth was cold and dark. For those who believe, the explanation is simple. Roosevelt poured so much of his spirit into this house, so many hours of thought, reflection, and hope, that his presence remains bound to it. His death there only deepened that bond. And Eleanor, tied forever to her husband's memory, may also return to grieve the life they shared. Even Fowler, loyal in life, may still keep watch, barking at unseen visitors in the night. The Roosevelt's little White House is more than a historic site. It is a place where history and spirit intertwine, where the past does not remain silent. By day, it tells the story of a president who led the nation through its darkest hours. By night, it whispers of the man himself, still rolling through the halls in his chair, still sitting by the fire, still accompanied by his faithful dog. And for those who catch a glimpse of Eleanor at the window, it is also a place of love and loss, where even death could not sever the bond between two of America's most enduring figures. The Tower Theater in Atlanta was once a crown jewel of the city's entertainment scene. Opened in 1927, it was a true movie palace. Ornate chandeliers sparkled overhead. Velvet curtains framed the stage, and the smell of buttered popcorn filled the air. On opening night, the theater dazzled with the glow of neon lights and the excitement of a crowd eager to see the newest films of the era. For decades, the Tower was a place of laughter, romance, and escape. But like many grand theaters of its age, time was not kind to it. By the 1970s, the Tower had fallen into disrepair. Its once pristine carpets were worn thin, its gilded ceilings tarnished. The crowds dwindled, leaving behind only empty seats and faded memories of glory. By 1978, the Tower was nearly deserted, its splendor reduced to a shadow of the past. And it was that year that the theater's story turned from melancholy to tragic. Harold, a projectionist who had worked at the Tower for years, spent most of his life in the cramped booth high above the auditorium. He was quiet, diligent, and always on time, though few knew him well. When his wife left him suddenly, the loss consumed him. Friends recalled seeing him withdraw further into himself, his shoulders heavy with grief. Then one night, alone in the projection booth, Harold ended his life. He hung himself among the reels of film, his body discovered the next morning by a staff member. The Tower closed for good soon after, its legacy sealed not only by decline, but by death. Decades later, the Tower Theater sits abandoned, its seats coated in dust, its stage sagging, its screens torn. Yet for all its emptiness, it does not rest quietly. Urban explorers who venture inside the crumbling palace tell of strange and terrifying encounters, as if Harold and the ghosts of the Tower's past still linger in the darkness. Those who enter often report hearing the faint whir of a projector, though no equipment has functioned there for years. The sound comes suddenly, filling the silent theater with the mechanical hum of film reels spinning. Moments later, faint crackles of audio accompany it, as though a movie is about to begin. Yet when explorers climb to the booth, they find nothing but cobwebs and rusted machinery. The projector remains dark, its reels unmoving. Still, the sound persists, echoing through the empty auditorium like a memory too strong to fade. Even more chilling is the sound of sobbing. From the projection booth comes the unmistakable cry of a man weeping, low and broken, carrying through the hollow halls. Some explorers have followed the sound, creeping up the narrow stairs to the booth, only to find it empty. Others have claimed the sobs grew louder as they approached, until it seemed someone was crying right beside them. The stories always end the same: the booth is deserted, yet the grief lingers. Many believe it is Harold himself, still mourning the loss that drove him to his death. One group of explorers claimed they experienced something even stranger. As they wandered the main floor, the massive screen suddenly flickered to life, glowing with the ghostly light of an old silent film. The image was grainy and monochrome, but the scene was unmistakable. A man dangled from the rafters of the theater, his body limp, swinging gently. Some of the group swore it was Harold, replaying his own death on the very screen where he once worked. When they fled the building and returned later with others, the screen was dark again, as if nothing had happened. The balcony of the tower has its own legend. Locals whisper that if you stand there at midnight, you may feel a hand rest gently on your shoulder. Dozens have reported it's the unmistakable pressure of fingers pressing down, the chill of invisible contact. Some believe it is Harold reaching out for connection in the loneliness of death. Others say it may be one of the countless patrons who once filled the seats, lingering in a place where they once laughed, cried, and dreamed. Whatever the truth, few are willing to linger long enough to find out. The atmosphere of the tower is heavy, suffocating even. Explorers describe the air as thick with sorrow, as though the building itself grieves for its lost grandeur. Shadows move across the aisles when no light shines to cast them. Footsteps echo from the stage, slow and deliberate. Though the boards are bare, some visitors claim to have felt watched the entire time they were inside, unseen eyes tracking their every move. Cameras often malfunction within the theater, batteries draining within minutes. Photographs coming out blurred or streaked with strange light. One particularly eerie story tells of a man who entered the tower alone, flashlight in hand. As he reached the stage, he turned back toward the balcony and froze. Row after row of seats, once empty, now appeared occupied by faint, hazy figures. Dozens of them sat silently, their faces indistinct, their outlines blurred, as though an audience of ghosts had returned for one last show. The man dropped his light in panic, and when he scrambled to pick it up, the seats were empty again. For some, the tower is more than just a haunted ruin. It is a symbol of memory itself. The laughter of children, the gasps of moviegoers, the applause of audiences, they all remain, bound to the building like echoes in the walls. And in the midst of it all is Harold, the lonely projectionist whose grief sealed his fate, and who now seems to replay his sorrow endlessly within the abandoned theater. The Tower Theater may be empty of living crowds, but it is far from silent. The whir of phantom reels, the cries from the projection booth, the cold hand on the shoulder in the balcony all remind us that some places hold on to their stories forever. And in the tower, the story is not one of glamour, but of grief, a tale of a man who could not escape his sorrow, and of a theater that refuses to let him go. And if you stand in the balcony at midnight, you might feel a hand on your shoulder. 20 places, 20 stories, 20 echoes of lives that refuse to fade. Georgia, this land of peaches and magnolias, of gospel hymns and front porch swings, is also a land of sorrow, of secrets buried beneath red clay, of souls who died in pain, in anger, and love, and never found peace. These aren't just ghost stories, they're memories, whispers from the other side. And if you walk through these places, if you listen in the silence, you might just hear them too. So the next time you visit Savannah, or hike Stone Mountain, or pass an old plantation in the dusk, pause, look around, feel the air, because Georgia doesn't forget, and neither do the dead. Thank you for joining me tonight, dear listener. If you enjoyed this journey into the shadows, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another tale. From Whispers in the Dark, share your own haunted experiences in the comments below. Have you visited any of these places? Did you feel something? Watch something? And if you're brave enough, turn off the lights, close your eyes, and listen. You never know who might be listening back. Until next time, sleep well.